Penny, it's been wonderful partnering with your organization.
Thank you. It's been such a delight to be here at the Target ALS annual meeting and seeing 6 of our co-funded consortia present the work that they've been doing over the past 2 years. We're really just energized by this progress at the intersection of ALS and FTD.
Could you explain, that overlap? I think for people watching, it's interesting to think, but these are 2 different diseases, right? So how can we be researching for them together?
Yeah, I think within all of neuroscience, I think there's been a sea change between how we define diseases by the symptoms that somebody expresses, which is more based off of where the damage is happening in the brain, versus what's the cause of the damage that we can actually target with drugs that might truly be transformative in slowing the course of the disease or stopping or preventing it. So in the case of ALS and FTD, there's certain individuals have C9 mutations, for example, that can manifest as ALS or FTD or a combination thereof, right? And there's other similar with TDP43. There's other pathways that are very much shared across the 2 disorders, and we can learn a lot by instead of siloing, instead working together.
Sure. And it's true that you could have actually both FTD and ALS, is that correct?
So behavioral variant FTD and ALS can definitely coincide. Sure. And that happens most frequently with families who are affected by the C9orf72 mutations.
Could you explain that actually? So for people watching at home, genetic mutations is something we talk about a lot. Obviously, that's a big part of our research for both diseases, right?
So C9orf72 is a specific type of genetic variant that's getting passed down from father or mother to child, and that it's causing these types of damage in the brain. So
understood.
It's an interesting one in terms of there's these repeat expansions, basically, that this dipeptide repeat is getting repeated and repeated and repeated. It's almost like a coding error, you can imagine, on a computer.
And just keeps proliferating.
Yes, exactly. And in turn, that's causing a whole range of different kinds of problems within individual cells that isn't showing up immediately in development, but as somebody ages, those causes of damage become more prevalent, and it starts to create a chain reaction of damage.
Sure. Can you explain what some of those, not specifically each one of them, but what a scientific core is and how that helps researchers?
So, when a researcher wants to do a given experiment, they rely on the tools that can allow them to do that, right? So they may need to have access to brain tissue, they may need to have access to any kind of biosample that's gathered from a human who has lived experience with the disease, or from healthy controls, for example. And that process of gathering that tissue and gathering that samples and treating those participants in the way that they need to be treated and sharing those samples, that's expensive and time consuming, right? And we want the researchers to focus on the innovation and the science. We don't want them working on going out and, it's equivalent of going to a grocery store to get what you need as opposed to growing it in a farm.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I think about how much faster it is to go ahead and cook your dinner if you're not having to grow all of your own food at the same time.
It's a great analogy, yeah.
Right. We hear it in the FTD space as well, where for years it was, well, let's get people focused on FTD research, let's get them funding FTD research. And now we've actually done pretty well with that. But now there's this question of like, well, yeah, but now we can't access the samples. Yeah. We don't have those tools readily available. There's a lot more than there used to be, and it's been wonderful. But I think ALS faces similar challenges. I think the resources that Target ALS has been investing in are going to be paying dividends for many years to come to, again, create that grocery store so that folks can really be cooking up some good therapies.
I love the grocery store analogy. That's a perfect one. I want to hear what's new at AFTD. What are you working on?
Oh, there's so many different areas. We're just really excited. We just finalized our next 3-year strategic plan, so there's going to be a lot of growth.
Okay.
And we have a wide range of our missions, so we do a lot in support and education, as well as in research, as well as in advocacy. So in the research side, which is the area that I focus on, we have other funding programs. For example, we have partnered with the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation to be funding early stage clinical trials as well as drug discovery. So we hope that some of our co-funded consortia, as they seek to move the needle further, could apply to those initiatives. We have funding for biomarkers. We have funding for early career researchers as well, postdoctoral fellows and
That's
others.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need the new talent. I think that's so important that we we have an incredible research community, and we have to foster, and I think you're doing that, foster the next generation of researchers who are bringing new ideas and new thinking to the field.
Yeah, I really hope as well that our two organizations and across the field we can work further to really break down the silos across ALS and FTD.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, the therapies being created, say specifically for C9, should be applicable to everybody who has C9.
Yeah.
And I think we'll get there faster for effective treatments the more that we're able to really leverage resources wherever they are and encourage folks to tackle that underlying disease. We're not as different as it sometimes seems. We have a lot more similarities than we have differences.
And to your point, I mean, would you say that, I mean, these learnings and advancements that we hope to make together can also have effects for other neurodegenerative diseases out there, because there are other similarities too that overlap?
I think there's so many. I mean, we saw yesterday a lot of presentations on this certain form of damage called TDP43, the certain type of protein.
Yeah.
It's not just ALS and FTD that have TDP43, and we don't yet know whether or not the right biomarker or the right tool is going to come from our research or if it's going to come from one of those other disorders. And likewise, right? And even on the symptom side, I mean, some of the advantages, certainly FTD has a lot of misdiagnoses with psychiatric disorders. It's really hard to define very clear boundaries, because as soon as you do with, like, let's say FTD is one of the Alzheimer's disease related dementias, right? ALS isn't. But ALS has a lot in common, and ALS has a lot of overlap with other motor conditions that FTD may not necessarily. My point is that it's really hard to lay clear boundaries behind which disorders are related to each other and which aren't. And at the molecular level, a lot of them have a lot of similarities.
Sure. I think it's important that we talk about a great project you're working on, which is the Patient Registry. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, thank you. So the Ftd Disorders Registry is a person-centered registry where anybody who's a person diagnosed, or a caregiver, or a family member who's has lived experience with FTD can go online and join themselves. And it's a secure online database, so their information is not being shared with anyone in a way that would identify who they are. But they're able to then learn more about the research that's happening within the FTD's field. They're also able to join a research arm that allows them to complete surveys to help share what is the lived experience of FTD. We hope that a lot of different families will choose to join. We've actually got over 5,000 participants, so it's not like it's a new thing, but it's something that we're really expanding the capabilities of. And we see it as a pivotal tool because there's a lot of challenges in helping people know who is able, what are the research opportunities that are out there? What should they think of when they're considering genetic testing and counseling? We have a lot of rich information from that.
Great.
And helping to connect people to research opportunities, as well as share what is that lived experience. Because a lot of times researchers are not getting that deep information, particularly some of the biopharma companies. They don't necessarily understand what it's like to live with these disorders in a deep way. So this is a way to help ground, capture the information of individuals, and then advocate for those values.
It's incredible that your organization exists.
Likewise, with Target ALS.
Oh, thank you very much. And we're very proud to partner with your organization, as I mentioned. And I look forward to, and I know the team looks forward to seeing what will come of it into the future.
I'm sure a lot of great things.
Thanks for your time,
Thank
Penny.
you, Steve.
This is great.
Yeah.